Yeah, so the Sabbath service is just wrapped up. Ayrton Toller, the UGC president, was very much focused on his whole thing is mission. Last Sabbath, it was on very it was a call to boldness in our approach. This time, it was very much on mission. He is not someone that wants to focus on controversy or divisions. He basically wants to mobilize the kind of the Adventist population to kind of get out the Adventist message. So that was very much the focus. I was expecting we have this hope in the song at the end, but it was the Hallelujah chorus and a much lesser known I Will Go anthem that I think they debuted 5 or 10 years ago, which I don't know, people weren't really singing because I don't think they really knew. But yeah, it's just a huge family reunion here, people from everywhere. I met up with Andrew's friends, Cologne's friends, a friend from the Philippines already this morning, in addition to others, and a fun, yeah. So it's a very cheerful, happy atmosphere, and I think people are basically going to lunch now ahead of the afternoon programming. I don't
You
know if
might
you
want to
guys
look
caught
around.
all that I said.
Yes, that came through loud and clear. Bjorn, look around a
Okay.
little bit for Uriel Heron. You might want to message him on your phone. He's a Facebook user, so the message is he mentioned something about maybe wanting to be with you there. So
Okay, I'll look
look for
around, but
him.
but literally there are tens of thousands of people walking around, so it's hard to
He
find
is,
people.
yeah, it's got to be overwhelming. I get it. Okay, um, Bjorn, do you want to have prayer for us as we get started?
Sure, sure. Let's pray. I'll switch my camera around for that bit. Um, Dear Father, thank you so much for ATSS and this chance to meet together. Thanks for the general conference that we've had. It's been a mixed bag, but the family reunion aspect and the fellowship has been absolutely beautiful. So please be with us here in our fellowship online and help us have a great session. In His name, amen.
Okay, I'm going to start with a little bit of a presentation here, if you don't mind. Just while I decided to do that, just while people were coming in. Can you see my slide there? Okay, good. I'm calling it View from the Cheap Seats, and I'll explain to you why. We were the place where they put us was at the very, very top, right up by the ceiling, this long, long counter. Uh, all of us sat up on the upper counter because it was scary to sit down below. There's no railings, there's no glass, there's nothing. You just feel like if I lean over, I may topple over the edge. Not a lot of people up there, and the hearing was terrible, but they called us the external media. And we were all kind of bummed about that because it sounded a little bit excluding. And in fact, it was. They put us in a place where we couldn't hear well. We were separated from everybody else. We laughed about, we called ourselves the unclean media as compared to the clean media, who were the people on the who were doing the church media. Okay, so the first thing that happened was the nominating committee. The nominating committee was 275 members, and it went on forever. They were meeting. These people didn't even have a chance to come to the floor, and I'll explain that in a little bit. They were meeting the entire time, and those who were in it said it was really tiresome. The GC is all about promotions and demotions. And that happened very quickly. On Friday, we got the first promotions and demotions, and the demotions was Elder Wilson. You may have heard it said that he broke into sobs and he was very upset when this happened. Insists that he wasn't, and I don't know where that information came from. But I will say this: there seemed to be a sort of relaxation in the whole group when Elder Wilson was not reelected. And the, what happened appears to be precisely what I predicted. Uh, People went into the nominating committee. His friends tried to get him reelected, and the nominating committee basically said, "We really appreciate Elder Wilson's service. He served us well for 15 years. That's long enough. Let's move on. Let's try somebody else." And the demotions are sad. It's hard. It's really hard for people to suddenly go from being in the middle of things to, all your emails, your mails, people asking you for advice, people you can tell what to do, that's gone. And these people are having a hard time adjusting to it. Uh, there, these were the significant changes: new president, new executive secretary. Of the 13 division presidents, 5 of them are new. One of them is actually, I think, somewhat younger than the usual run of people who get it into those uh, positions. Many moves to Silver Spring, as you would expect, and many lateral moves within. Um, I'm calling this slide the Great Absence. There were 2,700 delegates. Look at that floor down there on the right. Add up the votes on the left. Now, some of them are out because they're in the nominating committee, but I think a lot of them just got weary of what was going on. It was the most dreadful, long-running policy making. And I actually questioned an article, is this policy making, or are they just intentionally trying to keep people busy? I called it sludge because it was literally, shall we have this comma here or shall we have it here? Should we have this quotation on page 35 or to page 39? I find one of the most frustrating aspects of this meeting having a group of 2,000 people trying to edit one single document. Just ridiculous. And uh, let me tell you, I'm sorry, this is kind of dull here, and I wish I could fix it. A fellow came up to the microphone, and we knew right away this was coming because there were several people who kind of came up and started preparing the group for this idea that they wanted to talk about vaccinations. So this guy says, I move to add to the agenda review and discussion of the 2015 General Conference outcome statement encouraging immunization. And here's where he went with that. This was a theological matter to him, specifically the claim that Adventist health message is grounded in peer-reviewed scientific literature in addition to the Bible and the writings of Ellen White. I had no problem with that personally. If you say, do you want to be healed from your heart disease by good medicine that's been peer reviewed, or do you want to have somebody lay hands on you and pray for you? I'd say, well, I'll take the medicine. They can pray too, but I'll take the medicine. But he said this assertion merits careful examination as it appears in conflict with the fundamental beliefs. And he explained his beliefs that we affirm the spirit of prophecy as a reference point for our beliefs and the Bible as a reference point for our beliefs. In light of these principles, I urge that this issue be given a thoughtful and prayerful consideration. Now, I don't know how you feel about this. I knew that it was coming. I knew somebody was going to do this, and already I was not happy about it. Uh, it ended badly. His motion was voted down, and people voted to move on. The next morning, Ted Wilson got up, and here is where I think maybe he made a mistake. He seemed to me to be rather unkind in how he went about it. He said the statement, the way the amendment to the motion has been phrased, would indicate that this is a highly misinformed view. It insinuates that the General Conference has now put science above or equal to the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. I have to tell you that is unequivocally false. We have never done that. Well, frankly, I do that. I think science is something that God created and we should listen to it. And then he got a little bit more insulting. He said some people have badly misled others to say that the church mandated that you had to have a vaccination. Completely false. All of these were simply recommendations. This was before the vote, before they brought back the new president's name. I don't know. Some people speculated that it was how he not remember, it was voted down that the floor would discuss this was voted down. But the way he put it, it was rather rigid, a little bit, I thought, a little disrespectful and a little bit insulting. So you guys can react in the chat if you. I'm going to kind of buzz on through this presentation. Uh, as far as policymaker and intentional sludge, I wrote. We brought several thousand people from all over the globe to make grammar and punctuation changes to the church manual. Wouldn't there be better things to do with these dear delegates? I'd get them to strategize what would work for where they live. The next morning, a guy came up to the microphone, Leroy Abrahams, and I really admired him. He stood up. He said, "I want to remind us that these meeting proceedings are among the most public, significant, and extensive representation of Adventism today. In the post-Christian world, people, especially in my demographic, are tired of religious rigor, but deeply hungry for the love of Jesus Christ. In the post-Christian world, our friends and family are watching us to see if we will use these business sessions to respond to the crisis and sufferings that are impacting the entire world. When most of our deliberations focus on primarily tightening tithe and offering requirements or simply revising wording, we unintentionally signal indifference to the loneliness, addiction, suffering, abuse, and religious, just sorry about the typos here, religious disenfranchisement that are rampant among the people we love. While I appreciate the complexity involved in organizing and conducting a meeting of this scale, I implore our leadership to allow us to use just the fraction of the remaining time we have together to discuss at least one actionable agenda item that, if approved, will have a measurable, tangible, and positive impact on our lives today. Let's remember the profound words of Jesus in John 13:35. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples. Our greatest witness lies not in our doctrinal purity or mastery of scripture or the spirit of prophecy. Our greatest witness lies in how effectively we, as members, delegates, and leaders, demonstrate the sacrificial love of Jesus Christ by actively alleviating the physical, mental, and spiritual suffering. Now, I don't know. I thought it was kind of interesting that the day before I published my I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore article, and the next day he makes very first thing in the morning he makes this statement. Uh, Bjorn says I should take credit for it, but I don't know if I actually should. One of the most interesting things here was the number of people that we met and became friends with who are totally different from us. And just so you know, the guy in the upper left is Andy Roman of Advent Messenger. He was sitting upstairs with us. We prayed with him and talked with him. We have totally different takes on the world, and we even talked about that, how he looks at the world and how I do. The guy in the upper right is the president of Dakota Conference, who uh, read me the riot act for putting an article in Adventist Today that I correctly identified that he had allowed a pastor to continue in ministry who was beating his wife. John Bradshaw, of course, and you see Stephen Bohr in the middle. And the guy in the lower right may be here today. He walked up and introduced himself to me. That's Eduardo, who often comments on Adventist Today. So that was fun. And I got to say, I really felt like we also met Jerry Wagoner of Fulcrum 7. Uh, prayed for him, for his wife who has cancer. Being together and praying together humanizes folks. And I was glad that we had that opportunity. Now, I got to tell you, a lot of people ask, where's your booth? Adventist Today couldn't have a booth at the exhibit hall. But you could sell olive wood statues from the Holy Land. You could sell miniatures of the sanctuary and the Ark of the Covenant, and even a Lego sanctuary. You could sell games. Go Ye didn't seem too bad, but I was rather troubled by a game for children called How Saved Are You? I mean, I don't know. It just didn't strike me quite right. Um, we couldn't have booth in the exhibit hall, but there was lots and lots of Christian and Pathfinder and sanctuary jewelry everywhere. There was a little thing that I thought they were selling rings. They said, no, no, they only look like rings. They're actually slides for your Pathfinder um, scarf. Uh, AT couldn't have a booth, but you could sell spices. AT couldn't have a booth, but this is my favorite. I got to tell you, I just kind of blew my top when I saw this one. A company that sells herbal teas to cure childhood trauma. I mean, yeah, Linda, that's how I felt too. I was just like, good grief. Didn't you even look into this? Childhood trauma is not cured by herbal teas. I called this slide the Ministry of T-shirts. Everybody had a shirt to advertise their ministry, and the backpacks. Lots of Seventh Adventist backpacks walking around. Now, again, starting on Wednesday, they did start doing some discussion groups, and I was glad to see this. So they were about done with the uh, they're about done with the editing of the bylaws and the church manual. So they did have some group discussions, and they got people together in their local caucuses. And the first one I didn't think was too bad. I thought was pretty good. What has enriched your devotional life? Your communion with God? How is your church emphasizing revival? And they're asking, what can leadership do better? Uh, but then it kind of moved off in a sort of strange direction in the next one. The Seventh Adventist Church's God ordained movement with prophetic identity. How can the uniqueness of Adventism be nurtured in a local congregation? And there, I began to get sort of a feeling that that Christianity is Adventism. And I think a lot of our people actually think that. We're not talking here about Christianity. We've got to specifically talk about Adventism. And then the third one, unity. And the church, as you know, has been church leaders in the GC have been very concerned about unity because unity means you're not going to contradict anything that anybody from the GC says. And that seemed to be the direction that the discussions took. Bothered me a little bit. And you guys can respond to that after we get going here. Um, and then Friday, we had our Adventist Today party, and this was fun. Um, please notice that we did finally invest after resisting it for a long time. We did invest in a big display backdrop that we can take around. And I apologize. We should have thought that it was going to be wrinkled when we took it out. We're apologizing to everybody. Hey, sorry about our backdrop, but we went ahead and posed in front of it anyway. And we had a meal together. Several people told us the best food that they've had since they've come to General Conference, and I appreciated that. And you can see us posing on a backdrop. By the way, left to right, that's uh, Ed Reifsnyder, our board chair, Natasha Pujols, who is going to be writing for us. That's Nicole Brown-Dominguez, our news writer, and me trying to look like I'm the grown-up with the necktie. And then Björn Karlman, our executive director. A few more folks that were there. This is Floyd Painich from Kinship, and Floyd was did couldn't have a booth either, of course, but he was walking around meeting people and I ministering to them. And then for a few of our friends, and I'm hoping that Lena Taves is here. I didn't have a chance to check yet, and Larry Garrity, and just a couple of pictures there. So I'm finishing up with these questions, and please take a look at them and see what you think of them. Let me read through them. What are the most significant decisions made this week? How will the changing leadership affect you, if it does affect you? Did any policy matters, church manual, or bylaws concern you? Did you detect any change in attitudes or feelings as we went through the week? What do you see different in this GC session than previous ones you've attended? What exhibits or ministries impressed you the most? Who did you meet who made a difference to you? And what did you think of the group discussion questions? So those are ones I'm putting to some of my visitors who are coming on today, some of my guests, and then I'll put them to any of you if you want to ask any questions about any of these things or anything that you want to do. Uh, we'll be starting that in a little bit, and I'm going to stop the share and see who all is here. It's 148 of us. Let me switch to speaker view. All right. Um, uh, Nicole, let me give you a chance. Nicole was with us all week. Go ahead and talk to us a little bit. Which of the questions do you want to take on today?
So, one of the ones that I saw and that I spoke to you about was the exhibit hall. I got to spend a lot of time there in looking around for people to interview. As you got to see, Lauren and I got to have the absolute joy and privilege of finding a lot of really amazing people to talk to. But one of the things that I found was kind of this interesting sort of meld. You obviously saw the same kind of people who were always there. You have the really well-known ministries such as 3ABN, you have Voice of Prophecy, you have Advent Health, of course, front and center. But one thing that I really liked was how each of the divisions had their own space to be able to share their ministries. And it felt like it had a little bit more intimacy to it, which I really appreciated. I liked the fact that each division was given a slot to show these are the specific ministries that we are able to do that are kind of our call for discipleship. And I also love that one booth that I saw, Enough is Enough, which is basically a support group that is able to help people address sexual abuse from clergy, and it helps people define it. It helped them understand what that meant, how it often affected them in the long term. But more than that, it helped them process the grief and the curiosity around it without believing that somehow the only way for you to find healing is to completely and absolutely reject your faith. Absolutely. So it said your frustrations, your fears, your panic around the institution is absolutely valid, but that doesn't mean that the truths about the scripture, the truths about the gospel are somehow not able to be
Right,
available to you. And I loved that.
right,
I also really loved that Light Bearers was able to be there. I felt like there were a couple of ministries that really were grounded in discipleship and in introducing the gospel. It wasn't just about, oh, these are the services that we provide. These are the odd sort of little products that we do in order to help you get closer to it, or the paraphernalia of Adventism. There were some really strong booths that actually ended up being really, really popular when it came to redirecting people's attention towards the reason why we should be involved in the church, which is the gospel and being that community and being that support. So I loved being able to find those and also seeing things that were going on across the pond, because sometimes we get so isolated in North America that we forget about the fact that we are a global church. And it was really humbling and really amazing to see the fact that when we have a global church, we're able to see, oh shoot, we're actually kind of behind the game when it comes to things around technology, around practical discipleship, around a lot of really, really amazing things that are more than just in theory or kind of promoting Adventism, but promoting Christ in a practical and everyday sense, which I loved.
Yeah, that's a really good insight, Nicole. By the way, that reminds me to say the booths that I featured here in my little slideshow, where I featured them only to compare them with the fact that AT couldn't get a booth. There were some really amazing tables and booths there. And you are absolutely right. Some of them were very
Yeah.
gospel oriented, very inclusive, really good. My purpose was different. So just so you know, I wasn't making fun of all the exhibits.
No,
Uh,
I do think it was a little interesting of how there was a whiff of some interesting imagery that felt almost as if you had sort of this person who didn't understand the church to seeing all the paraphernalia of pathfinders just behind these glass cases, or just these carved things, or the trying to somebody who's never once understood. Those poor security were quite confused. But yeah, so some provided a little bit of a side eye, and I think that we definitely need to note the fact that those exist as in like, that's an interesting
mhm.
choice. But yeah,
This
it was
reminds me to say,
I think it
to
was
slip in here.
definitely good.
Okay, this reminds me to say here that a little note that I wrote in one of my pieces, I think maybe Wednesday or Thursday. Walking through the exhibit hall, you begin to realize something, and you all need to know this. Those of you who are look like me, are American, and are have white faces. You just walk through, and you begin to realize very quickly that this is not a white American church anymore. Wow, almost everybody had faces of some shade of brown, um, and it's not us, it is them. And Bjorn, I asked you to unmute because you had some really good insights about who is doing the really creative stuff there. And it's not Americans.
Okay, well, let me test my Wi-Fi again. I'm hoping you guys can hear me.
Hear you
Uh,
just fine.
okay, great. Yeah, that was fascinating to me. So if you walk through, I mean, Lauren is absolutely right, and hopefully you've been able to see the video that I've been panning around the crowd. This is a beautifully diverse and international crowd. It's a truly global, faith community in women's, and I mean, I'm delighted. The exhibition hall is very revealing, especially when it comes to innovation. So hands down, the people that owned did the most cutting edge innovation was the South American division, specifically the Brazilians. I mean, I walked through a virtual reality experience. I put goggles on and could look around, and they have this avatar that speaks to you, and I mean, they use her to kind of to do Bible studies and to kind of present topics and things. But I mean, they were so advanced. They had that. They had Netflix, like an Adventist kind of Netflix imitation. They had. I mean, they were so tech advanced. Now they're not pushing the envelope theologically, like from what I could tell, it's fairly middle of the road Adventism. I wouldn't say overly conservative or overly progressive. It's just kind of centrist stuff. But technologically, that I mean, it was just light years ahead of anybody else. I went to the NAD for comparison because they tend to be top dog. And with all respect to my NAD friends, it felt like a cemetery in there. It was dead. It was boring. It was just kind of. It was not at all what you would expect. So the bleeding edge is definitely South America nowadays. The Asians were very on top of things as well. But yeah, the global north is is uh, is simply not keeping up when it comes to innovation. So that was what I observed.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. As I walked around, you'd walk by anything from South America. They either had something really technically advanced, or they had some extraordinary musicians there, young people just singing, who are just out crazy talented. Everything they did is all the really advanced stuff is coming from South America, which, by the way, remember, our new president is from Brazil. So is some of that good to sneak through? I just don't know. Matthew Lucio, I've got you on here. Matthew, uh, tell everybody who you are. I know Matthew's a pastor, but you're also have a history podcast. And tell us who you are and give us your little bit of background on you, please. You
Sure.
there,
Be
Matthew?
happy to. Hopefully the internet. I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, good. Internet is a little spotty. There might be a few people in this building on the Wi-Fi. But yeah, Matthew Lucio, I do communications for the Illinois conference. And as you mentioned, the Adventist History podcast as well. And so I'm here, however, in that communications capacity as part of this global newsroom. How about this side of it? There we go. So I'm
Yeah,
enjoying
you
life in
you,
the
you
suite right
have
now.
the internal. You're the clean media. We were the unclean media.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm the vegetarian media.
So go ahead, give us some impressions. There was anything that really struck you? What was really important that happened at this event?
For me personally, I was interested in what this first sermon. I know the president preached last Sabbath, but that was written before the session, of course. And so this was his first sermon really as president that he wrote as president. And I was curious what kind of tone he was going to strike, how he was going to treat some issues. Of course, the proof is in the pudding. When you talk about unity, what do we mean by unity? When you talk about mission, what do we mean by mission, right? So I think these are some outstanding questions that remain to be seen. And I didn't expect him to answer everything in one sermon, but
Right,
I
right.
I was very pleased to see quoting from non-Adventists during the sermon. Um, it's showing that he is well read and he's willing to draw from sources other than the Bible and Ellen White in order to form his views. And I appreciate that. That's a positive sign. Uh, on a personal level, I enjoyed that he gave everyone permission to clap for Ted Wilson. Yeah, when, if we recall, 15 years ago, Ted asked everyone not to clap. So
I love it. Oh, I
I
love
think
it.
that was, I would love to put those two clips up next to each other. I think that was a symbolic shift for those who remember what it was like 15 years ago in Atlanta. So, I'm cautiously optimistic, praying for him and wishing him well. Uh, and we'll see what he means by the words that he uses.
Yeah, Matthew, let me re bounce a little bit of this off of you here. Um, we did know before we knew two things. We knew that Urchin Kaler was the front runner, and we also knew that he came from South America with some baggage, and the South
Hmm.
Americans were very happy to tell us that. Some of the pastors,
Mm.
especially, were very happy. But I got to tell you, that first that first press conference that he had, I couldn't help but notice how the young people who were in there warmed to him. They
Yeah.
just he talked Portuguese, he talked Spanish, he talked English. He smiled, he made jokes. He was self-deprecating a few times. People asked him a question, he would kind of make a joke. Well, one time he said, they asked him a hard question. He says, "Oh my, do I have to answer that? Just find a tree and crucify
Yeah.
me."
Yeah.
And everybody laughed, and I was optimistic because I felt like he was relating to people in a much more
Yes.
in a way that his predecessor hadn't ever. Like, for
Yeah.
example, somebody asked him, "What do you think of women's ordination, LGBTQ?" And he said,
Yeah.
he kind of split the difference. He said, I'm willing to talk to anybody. I'm even willing to talk to Adventist Today and Spectrum, but I'll always stick with the Bible. I'll always stick with the
Yeah.
Bible. So,
Yeah.
okay, he didn't really answer it, but unlike his predecessor, he didn't go straight to this is right and this is wrong.
Yes. Right. Yeah. And I think I noticed that too. And I think we those of us who have been interested in change, are going to have to be careful that we don't kind of fill in the gaps where we see in him what we wish would happen, and we
Right.
kind of get to run ahead of him and start saying everything is different now. That the bit about I'm going to follow the Bible is, very Adventist answer to that question. It doesn't really reveal anything about how you read the Bible, but we'll see. I do agree. He does seem personally more interested in connecting with people, and he also seems to be a man of conviction. He obviously has fully formed opinions on things and beliefs. So I think we're just going to see, especially with this emphasis on mission that he's been hitting home all week. Just to pick one issue, because people supporting the ordination of women in the pastoral ministry have said that, well, one of the arguments for that is to accomplish the mission of the church. Let's get all hands on deck, everyone in the pulpit who is called to be in a pulpit. So does he understand mission as encompassing female pastors who want to be ordained, right? So is that on the, we need this because the mission demands it, or is that on the, I'm not going to go that road because the Bible tells me not to? So which of these two principles are going to prevail here?
And I think a lot of us in at least in the Western church believe that there's probably no clear biblical conviction on this either way, but certainly our previous president felt that there was. So that's good. That's going to be interesting. By the way, my friend Maury Jackson, I don't know if you know Maury from La Sierra. I asked him about the new president. He said, what really encourages me, because Maury's a college teacher. He said he has young adult children, and that has to make a difference. And I thought that was insightful of him. Hey, thanks so much, Matthew. I know that you got a whole bunch of stuff to do. You can stand and listen and raise your hand if you have time while you're editing things there, but I'll let you go. And I'm going to turn now to David Neal. David, can you hear me?
I can hear you very clearly, Loren. Thank you.
David has taken a job. This is a new job for you, isn't it? In the division office?
That's correct. Until Wednesday, I served as communication and media director for the division, Trans-European division. And on Wednesday, they said, would you serve as ministerial chaplaincy and stewardship?
Now, the question I'm going to ask you, and I know you have to be cautious. We understand this, the politics of being way up there on the scaffolding in the church now. But let me ask you this. How do you see the changes in leadership right now? What's happening?
Okay, so here's the first one. Here's the first one, and it's visible. We are free to talk with you now. Come on, this is very, very good news. This is revolutionary. That for the last decade and 15 years hasn't been possible. We are in the same room together. My president heard that you wanted somebody on Adventist Today, and he said, go for it. Go for it. And that's why I'm here, representing the Trans-European Division, the official church, the people who wear the green vegetarian press cards, right? We're talking to each other, and Cola at the press conference on Monday, or whichever day it was, said, let's dialogue. And that is probably the biggest change from your perspective and the people in this room that's taking place this week. And that's beautiful. That's a lovely, lovely piece of progress. It's the end of the Wilsonian years. 26 years out of the last 50 or 60 years, they led the church, the dynasty. And I don't want to mean any disrespect to them. I hope, and I know there's a lot of people in this room that have been terribly frustrated with the story about certain elements of that leadership. But I hope history will be kind to them as individuals in the sacrifice and service they gave. I don't perceive them as control freaks. I don't perceive them as trying to be manipulative or anything. I think they have deep convictions, which I have a different worldview, but they have deep convictions about how they understand Scripture, how they understand Ellen White, and they have a solid padlocked wall around that worldview. I get it, but we're in a different age, a different time. and for some fresh thinking in global Adventism is particularly needed. And I'm with everybody in this room about that. But it's going to take time. There's going to be no revolution overnight. Elder Kohler is a good man. You don't get to the top of Adventism by being a revolutionary. You don't. Let's get real. You have a global worldview, a global body that has a conservative worldview. So change isn't going to come overnight, but it's in small corners. And what I do believe he's committed to is allowing divisions to contextualize Adventism into the needs of their territory without question. And I would say this is a new day.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. I think all of us probably are relieved to hear that. No, David, somebody gave me an insight into the Wilsons once that I think is very important. He said, if you sit down with Elder Wilson personally, he is warm and kind and friendly. He remembers your name. He said he even invited my lesbian daughter to come along with us to have lunch. He didn't bother him at all. But the moment you step into the situation where the church is in any way threatened, he said his convictions are about saving the church and keeping it from being harmed in any way. The organization is the centerpiece. And I thought that was a pretty good insight into him.
From across the waters in Europe, I think during the last 3 or 4 years, or even 10 years, and particularly in the age of Trump, I think I did see some of the old guard fighting culture wars. And it seemed to be a culture war, particularly to do with the North American situation. You're in Washington, D.C., you're near Congress and all that, and you're right in the heart of the argument. And whatever left or right was saying, the church, the old guard would come out and unintentionally use what I would describe as culture war language. And I'm not sure it was always comfortable, and the gospel didn't always shine through.
Perhaps that's going to change. I certainly hope so. That in itself would be great if Elder Kaler is able to avoid stepping into those traps. Because, to be honest, David, those of us in the United States, sometimes it's like walking a narrow path between two pits of quicksand. You can barely avoid it. People will put you on the spot and try to push you into one or the other. So I really, really hope that what you say is true, that we can start really pushing Jesus and not the culture wars.
Yes, the gospel must shine through in all our conversation.
I love that. I unmuted Dr. Lena Taves. Lena, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. And I wanted to bring on one of our professors. Dr. Taves is from Union College, and we've been chatting and visiting all week. And by the way, just so you know, Lena just went through a really serious accident where her car was hit by a big truck, and it was really miraculous that she got through it without being hurt worse than she did. So I praise the Lord for that for you, Lena. That's a wonderful thing that you are up and walking around. She told me that the car was so crushed, it was like she was trapped inside of a little can on both sides. And praise the Lord. My question for you, though, is what do you think as you talk to, there are several of your professors, of your fellow colleagues, not just at Union College, but all over the Adventist Church there. I know we chatted quite a bit with Darius Yankovic and others. When you look at what's happening now, the change in the leadership, do you think it's going to affect what happens at your college, in your theology department?
Well, I can tell you a few observations here that I've experienced being here. I was a little disappointed that some of my colleagues, like for example, some of the female professors and other friends of mine from ASRS and from my women in theology group were not interested in coming to the general session for obvious reasons, and that were disappointing for me. I, on the other hand, felt like I needed to be here to represent more women. And in fact, when I was asked to recommend a name to send from Union Adventist University, I nominated my female theology student to be here and represent us. And she represented us really well. And there were a few disappointing parts where, I mean, it was nice that Union College's booth was very close to other universities and some young people that we could interact with. And as a young female student, she told me that there was a good connection there between them. So she felt like it's nice to talk with someone else who's from the other part of the country and the other part of the world and, you know, discuss things. And part-time, I worked at a different booth helping my friend sell a book. So, and I went between two badges. It's either Union College badge and my other booth badge. And my theology student was always at Union. And there were different people passing us. And when I was with a different badge, they asked me, "What do you do?" And I tell them, "I teach at Union." "Oh, how wonderful and exciting. And we're so glad you teach at Union. What do you teach?" And I tell them, "Well, I teach theology and religion." And all of a sudden, all the enthusiasm and interest is gone, and the person doesn't even look at me anymore. And I said, "Well, would you like to know a little bit more about my theology program?" "No, thank you." And they would leave. A few people would leave. That was a bit shocking and disappointing. The same thing happened to my female theology student who was there with her husband at Union University booth. And there was a pastor who approached her and asked her, "So tell me about Union. I'm actually that pastor talked with someone else and said, I'm looking for an assistant pastor for my church. I need a young person, a young college student who's in theology program, and I would like to have an assistant pastor in my church." So the representative from Union said, "Oh, we have so-and-so, and she's a female theology student, and she's graduating next year." He completely ignored that comment, turned away, and she tried to reach out to him and say, "Well, do you want me to get you connected with my department? Would you like to know about someone?" This person turned around and left completely. On the other hand, there was a person who came and affirmed her in what she was doing and invited her to do graduate program in leadership and other types of things. So those were the positives and the negatives in as far as younger generation and my students who I am training and my female students who I am training. I don't have a lot of them. We have only a handful of students. For each year of our theology program, we have one woman. And so I don't know if you wanted to hear from the young people. And I asked you, how does it feel to be a young person here at the General Conference, a young new generation, new blood? And she said, I felt okay, but I felt like we need more young people here. And she also told me, she said there are lots of old people and they're all talking with each other and know each other from like 40 years or 50 years or however many years. She felt like if we would invite more college students into seminars, into discussions, into probably hard to put them into decision making at this point, but she felt like they're not always heard in our church, and she puts big hopes on the new leadership in the view of being heard. And she was really pleased with music, she told me, because she felt like, I don't know, it was a little old-fashioned at first, and just like in the way everybody talked and dressed and addressed each other, it felt like, I don't know, she said, I felt like in grandma's world. And all of a sudden she sees some young people producing beautiful music and not only hymns and not only traditional old songs. She felt a little bit better about it. So she, in comparison to other GC sessions when she came with her parents, it was a little bit different. So yeah, and this is just, it's still, I feel like it's still a struggle being a woman professor, like the way I encountered people, a woman professor in theology and my female theology student. We experienced the same things. When people find out what we do, first they're very nice and friendly, and then when they find out what we do and what we teach and what we represent, there's this coldness. But it's not with everyone. There were many others who were very nice and affirming. And of course, AAW was a great booth with a Jesus picture, where they had a picture of that Jesus picture was made out of pictures of all the women ministers all over the world. And that was a beautiful creation. I thought it was my favorite booth, and I try to advertise it on Facebook and tell everyone about it, tell them to visit it. So we have hopes that maybe there will be more younger generation inclusion. There will be more women inclusion. It's a little sad here, in a sense, being a woman in ministry and theology. There's this sadness of in that you're not in. I mean, you're kind of included, but you're not. With Mary Kay, it's the weight. It's that weight. I don't like this word. I don't like the waiting. I mean, we've waited so long, and why should we wait more? And when the one preacher got up one evening, I mean, besides the boring reports on the video, I would rather see more, like live people, but they had all of these glowing reports on video, which was fine in a sense, but, a preacher got up one evening for an evening worship, and he said, it doesn't matter if you have a status or credentials, or the implication was just do the Lord's work, which is fine with me. Sure, we should be doing the Lord's work. But what about recognition? What about equal pay? What about all of these other things that we fight for? It just felt like you just sit and be happy and enjoy where you are. Not being included, not being equally paid and accepted in certain ways. That felt a little sad. And a lot of my professor friend, female theology friends, did not come. I'm probably the only one who came here, as far as all of my SRS group and all of my professor women, because that bitterness from last time in San Antonio, well, when we were all here, that bitterness is that they just didn't feel like there's any hope, and they didn't want to come. So anyways, that's a little bit maybe of a negative thing, but there are lots of good positive things of meeting people from all continents and praying with them and fellowshipping. This is wonderful, in a sense. But there's this, there's a little bit of bitterness, I guess, in me and in my female colleagues that are here or not here, who are watching from a distance. So,
Len, I had just said a little bit ago that the church is more brown, more global South than it used to be. Do you think that shift is also maybe, because my impression is that, I could be wrong, but my impression is that at least the West and Europe tend to be more willing to talk about women ministers openly and say we need to do this. But I was impressed how many of those faces at the Association of Adventist Women booth were also brown faces. They were women who were working against the odds. They were do you remember the name of the lady at the AEW event who was from Africa, who was pulling prostitutes off the street and giving them jobs and rehabilitating them? I mean, I was just blown away by that.
absolutely, absolutely. I was very impressed by some of the women, what they do, where they are, their stories about their courage. They're not in North America. I mean, we struggle here, but think about all of these women who work in those remote places in the chauvinistic societies, where they have to stand up and be courageous in speaking up. You know my story that you published when I was cornered for being scheduled to preach, and I was told not to preach by a man who was 3 sizes bigger than me, who cornered me in the hallway and told me not to preach because just because I'm a woman. He hasn't heard me say a word or hear about what I have to say. It's just because I'm a woman and I'm a small woman and an easy target. So I was cornered in the hallway for preaching. But putting that aside, I just was encouraged because I worked at a booth that was very close to Newell College, and I know lots of people there in Trans-European Division, all of my friends from there. I was just really encouraged being there, and I'm very, I respect Dr. Daniel Duda, and I respect all of the staff there. And it was just amazing to work with my European friends and colleagues and women there represented Newell College and represented their Trans-European Division. We have to stay united, and we need to move on. So the next time there's no bitterness. The next time there's joy, there is happiness in the fact that women are the same as men, and they can do the same things, and they can minister. And
Yes.
they can get equally paid and equally recognized for what they do, and not always hide and bite their tongues and being afraid of telling people who we are. And because some church leaders, it's difficult to talk with them. You have to be a little bit like, well, should I say what I do, or should I be quiet? Should I know my place? In other words,
Yeah.
should I speak boldly?
Thank you, Len. I also have my pastor here, Uriel Heron-Arena from Glendale City. When Uriel, there you go. Uriel, you only were here for a few days, but do you have any reflections on what was going on in the few days that you got to watch things happening here?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, first of all. But yeah, this is my very first time. I have to say this. This is my first and only GC session that I've been able
Me
to attend.
too.
And I came, yeah, oh yeah, there you go. When I came in I was curious. I wanted to come and observe, kind of low key. And there are a few things that struck me, and that are both positive and negative, I guess. I think the first few days, I got here on Tuesday, and the first few days I was very attentive to what was going on in the sessions, in the meetings. And those were a little bit depressing, I think. It kind of, I feel like we're a church that's very, at the organizational level at least, we're very out of touch with real life. It felt like, someone came up and mentioned something about, they wanted more young people to be involved. They wish, they came to the mic and they said, I wish that we could have more people involved. And the first thing I thought to my head was like, I don't know that the young people that I know would want to be involved in this. To come all
Exactly.
the way to St. Louis and, take the time off work or even in their holidays, in their break, to come up there for what was happening there. I will say the positive is also sort of the other
Uriel,
side of
I
that.
gotta
Go
I
ahead.
gotta interject here. The fact of the matter is, somebody just said we need to have young people involved making decisions. Not those decisions. They're not important decisions. Whether you
Mhm.
move the comma here or here, have them make real decisions.
But, and I think
But
that's it. Go ahead.
no, I really appreciate your comment. That was a really good comment.
Yeah, but what on the other side, right? Just juxtaposed to that, I went through the exhibit area, and there's a lot of young people, a lot of creative
Yes,
energy, a lot of youth passion. All right, and so somehow the young people and the energy is in one place, and it cannot kind of get to the other side. All right, which
that's a
means
good
that a lot of
insight.
even the stuff that the young people are passionate about and creativity isn't being directed in somewhere that's meaningful and useful. I
Right.
felt like a lot of young people designing really cool T-shirts, but even the content of the T-shirt were a little sort of superficial. Right, so the energy is there, the passion to do something is there, but there seems to be a blockage somewhere in terms of where we can kind of push that energy to something that can actually have impact for the church for the global church. And so that was a little bit sad. I will say I was kind of happy with you guys have been in this game longer than I have. But one of the associate, I think it was for ministerial, Dr. Ward. I think her election was kind of interesting to me. She does not come through the sort of normal pathway that people get elected in those positions in our church. She spends, most of her career outside of the Adventist church. She went she was just a couple of years ago, she was in seminary doing her MDiv, second career. And within a few years, she's in a position. I think that's good. That was a little imagination, for, sort of, we kind of thinking through how to think creatively about how we get people elected. And that was kind of good news for me. I'm always looking at our administration, looking at our leadership, looking at people, kind of paying attention to how creative they are. And I think that kind of showed a little glimpse of creativity, going off the norm. It is a sort of holy disturbance, I think, to have someone from such a different path coming into that position. We'll see if that continues, if that becomes contagious. We'll see. But I will say, one last thing. I have to say this. There's been a lot of talk about sort of how brown or how unwhite our community is, and I think that's true. And I think that our church is becoming more global, and the world is made up of more non-white people than it is made of white people. So our church, as it goes into the extremities of the earth, as it were, will become brown. But I think what I noticed as a first timer is also how Americanized Adventism is. So even as it is being embraced by people of different colors, it remains very Americanized and the language is the same. So it's a uniformity rather than a unity that I've experienced. Someone from the Philippines is saying something, and the only difference in what they're saying is the accent, but they're using language that anyone else in the world are using the same language to talk about faith. And I was just, and that really marked me, because I'm like, what is happening? What is the Spirit doing in the Philippines? What is the Spirit doing in Romania? What is it doing in Argentina that is culturally different to what it's doing in America? And if you were just listening to all the talking points, all the comments, it was just like, we might as well be just one country. Because although we are, internationally represented, we are not in thought diverse at all. And this is from someone who comes from the global South, right? I've spent most of my life in the global South, half of it, I guess, maybe let's say half of it in the global South and half of it in the Western world. And recently in America, I have not experienced at the GC what I've experienced when I've gone to local churches, when I go to a Filipino church, when I go to a Jamaican church, how they worship, how they speak about it. And at the moment they step into the GC, the language that they talk about things, the language that creates what the rest of the world is supposed to be looking at and taken from, remains to me very Americanized. There's very little diversity in thought.
Even the same songs, same hymns, different language, but
Yep.
same hymns,
Same hymns, same
same
style of
talking
music.
point, same evangelistic
Right.
meeting series. Yeah, you're right. You would wonder what would be living in, let's say, an impoverished part of Africa, because a lot of people are. How would that affect the message? If the message is the same, they're still talking about the sanctuary. They're still talking about the prophecies in exactly the same way. They don't have a South America and African slant on them.
No. You'd think that God was only speaking to one group of people, and
I think you
that's
gave me the
worrying
best
to me.
insight. I think you gave me the best insight of the day, how different the exhibit halls were from the floor. It's like all the energy was over there with the young people. All the dullness was on the floor with the old people.
Who were making the key decisions. Well, not this time around, but normally would be making important decisions.
Sometimes,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got some hands raised here, and so I'm starting with Carson Thompson. And who do you want to address your question to?
Basically, all of you, because I think we're asking a very fundamental question. Will the change of leadership of the church have any impact in our day-to-day lives? And also the second question is, I don't know how many of you heard all of Kohler's inauguration address. I did, which is why I barely made it onto Adventist Today afterwards. And if I remove just a few of his slides, they could just as well have been done by Ted Wilson. In terms of theology, there is nothing new. In terms of the emphasis on the soon coming of Christ, which for me, that's an elephant in the room, and I may be way off base there, but we've been preaching it for 180 years. And it just such a cognitive dissonance related to that. I'll stop there, otherwise I'll keep going.
Yeah, I had commented to Bjorn during the week how many times the phrase was used, even when they were talking about some absolutely unimportant things in the church manual. We need to make this change in order to hasten the soon coming of Jesus. And I was surprised at how many times it was repeated. It's been 2,000 years. Why do we suppose that this is going to happen in the next 5? And I get what you're saying. David, Neil, I'm going to give this one to you.
Okay. I'm going to be cautious here, obviously, of what I say. I'm going to be circumspect. I think we know our movement. We know the buzzwords. And I'm not making excuses for them. And I sometimes think we're shocked by what we see. You know, it's like being part of a family. You know the DNA of the family. You know the behavior of the family. You learn to live with it, and you accept it in grace. And it's going to take a long time to grow. And of course, as part of a global family, it is a myth to assume we're all on the same spiritual level. And I don't mean hierarchical, but in understanding and in maturity and the depth of which we understand Scripture. So if you're a plain reader, you're going to behave like imminent, okay? Because you're plain reading. For those of us that have are able to contextualize and interpret Scripture, we think differently and we use different jargon and we're more circumspect. And also, I think that if you work in the General Conference building, I don't think you have any choice but to use certain terms to be accepted, at least under the previous regime. You know, there's a subculture in there where they know, you know the buzzwords, you know what reading, what text to use, what quotes to use. And, you know, I've seen people go to the GC building and I know that they are progressive and they're wonderful people, but in the house, the only way you succeed is to use Ellen White or whatever. Now, I'm just suggesting change is going to be slow. Don't expect things overnight. But for example, the atmosphere in the Trans-European Division leadership is we interpret Scripture and then we apply. We don't use buzzwords. We are circumspect. We think before we speak. That's who we are. And so it's not based on some sort of denominational speak. We're very cautious about how we speak, and we want to be rid of the cliches because they don't have any meaning anymore. But you see, Kohler, of course, talks about unity. How do you maintain unity? And the issue is, I think you said, how does it affect the local church? And what I heard from Kohler this morning was some encouraging words about the local church. We've got to learn to love each other, understand each other, respect different worldviews. And that hadn't been there before. And he did say that. And that we have to have a message of hope, not a message of, as I see sometimes in my local chat room, here's doomsday stuff, you need to read this conspiracy, you need to read that conspiracy. The heart of Adventism is at the local church. And while we're really excited about what we saw today, or not, it's in the local church that this really matters. And it takes, I think where we're at, and this may not be heartening, it takes a generation to make change in Adventism. It isn't going to happen over 5 years, and it isn't going to happen over a decade. It's generational, and that's the truth.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of us who feel like if our local church is different, somehow wrong. We're all supposed to be talking off the same point chart, and so I like that. I've always felt like like faith should be local. Of course, sometimes having only one local church to go to, and if it's not a one that you feel very good about, that can be a problem too. And that's why we have Adventist Day Sabbath Seminar and others like it. Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate that. Lester, this is your turn. Who would you like to address?
I think to you, Loren, and the rest of the group, I have, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, great, because I'm calling from La Paz, Mexico. I have one comment, one apology, and a question. First comment is, a year or two ago, you wouldn't have caught me dead in this forum. You would not even have caught me watching General Conference, which I've been to a couple of times. I was so far away from the Jews in context of ordained ex-Adventist minister in the 70s, knew all the players, the old folks, and et cetera, et cetera. Left the church, but because of the testimonies of Adventist Today, Spectrum, you, Loren, all the others who sat on the fringe, on the corners, up in the balcony, and spoke to us, whether it was quietly or with a resounding voice. I'm back here today. And I found
Wonderful.
Jesus again. I found Jesus again. And I think that's going to be my question. But the other apology I want to make is that I feel a little bit bad because when the article that came in Adventist Today about from South of America to Silver Spring, how our new president was elected, I jumped right in because there was a section that said of something about the tears of or the weeping about Ted C. Wilson. I'm sure some of you read that. It was a quote directly from Spectrum, where it reported that Wilson broke down sobbing in his suite. Two people said it. One was anonymous. I made a comment about it, and it started an S-storm throughout the rest. I probably should not have made that comment, but it was there anyway. We really did not know what happened. I affirm Adventist Today for not pursuing that, waiting to see how it fell. And so I would like to make that apology publicly. Final
Oh, thank you,
question.
Lester. I just want you to know that we try very hard to be kind to people, and that didn't feel kind to me. So I'm glad that we didn't produce that. Go ahead.
And no, and I appreciate that. And like I said, I would love to have retracted that, but it is what it is. Sometimes I get too impulsive. And then the final question, really for all of us, is to turn this around. It's been great to hear all the proceedings, all the comments and everything. But I think those in the corners like you guys have a real, it's not a soapbox, have a real pulpit and a ministry for the thousands, maybe even millions of ex-Adventists who are starting to think and to come back. I think it's a tremendous opportunity. I read a lot of stuff in between the lines, sometimes more than I should, but when I saw a comment from a well-known ex-Adventist minister who, or a checkmark, I can't remember, who became an atheist on Bjorn's comments, made a check mark or whatever, I thought, interesting. This guy is still looking back in, like where I was, who almost became an atheist many years ago, and saw the cross and saw Jesus again. What tremendous opportunity. We talk about evangelism with the old folks. What tremendous opportunity you guys have. I'm getting old. I don't know how much longer I have here. I have a liver transplant and I'm, in my 70s. But what opportunity we can do? What can we do from this pulpit of ours in the corner to make this a real testimony and a witness to the others who are struggling like me, who are almost coming back and who will come back if I believe in the Jesus I do and accept him as the one who was in the middle of the cross and said, come on into.
I like that. Uriel, are you still there? I was going to bring you into this conversation if you are. Unmute yourself. Um,
I am.
uh,
Yes.
yeah, I'm a member of your church, even though I don't live there and get to. But your church seems to, the Glendale City Church seems to really, really want to extend its arms to everybody. Talk to Lester a little bit about an openness, a desire to bring in even the agnostics and the atheists.
Yeah, I think yeah. You know, someone mentioned, the local church vis-a-vis what's happening at the GC. This week was a reminder again to me of how far that distance is, and how, in many ways, where my local faith community, the community that I serve, doesn't really get affected a ton with what's happening. We've decided that we're going to be a church that values people more than valuing that we all believe in the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have decided that we will, even if we get labeled as rebels, or even, some people don't even consider us as an Adventist church, although we insist on being an Adventist church, that primarily our task is to create a community where people can be known, a community where people can be fully humanized, rather than hang on and hang on stuff like words like absolute truth, and words like the fundamental beliefs and that kind of stuff, right? We're a church that has that believes in Christ and what Christ has done for us, for humanity, and we look at that being our priority. If Christ humanizes everyone, and that's our job at our church. And so at Glendale City, that's been what our primary focus has been. It hasn't to be Adventist as much as it has been to be bearers of the Christian message, which is that all humans deserve the dignity of being humanized. And so our efforts is in this humanization of all people. So we have an openness to everyone, where people in our community weren't sure if they're Christian, Adventist, or Buddhists. All right. And that would not stop us from having them included and participate in what we're building at our church, in the hope that it is Christ that eventually, transforms them. And we can be unified in this joint pursuit of a real Christ experience. And so I don't know if that's helpful, but that's how we look at it. Hey, you're welcome as you are. You do not have to believe in what everyone else believes to be here. But we do have some things that we expect you to come in and agree in the dignity of all, regardless of color, race, gender, sexual orientation. Those are the things that make us human, and we want to celebrate that. And so if you cannot accept that, then you'll have a difficulty being part of our community. But this is really what we're about. We look at the Bible and see that Christ is for each person as they are, and that's what we try to reflect in our community. And so if there's anyone out there who's looking for a community that I won't judge you based on your belief or anything like that, our community might be ours. I'm not blagging our church, but I just want to kind of let people know, because there's a lot of misconception about Glendale City Church. But we are primarily a community that seeks communion rather than theological perfection.
I became a member there, even though I live in Ohio, so I'm a big booster. Thank you, Ariel.
Yeah.
Lester, was that helpful?
Yes, it was. Thank you very much. Blessings.
Now I've got my friend Alice Golovenko, and he had some insights about Russia and Ukraine. And Alex, fill us in a little bit. Give us a little understanding of what was your reflections as you thought about this in the GC.
Thank you, Loren, and thank you for the invite. I made sure I get to my hotel room that I have better reception here. We've been here for 10 days. This is our 10th day. So we're here from the beginning with the family, my son, who's a pastor in Ohio, Loren. Maybe you should transfer to his church,
Yeah.
By the way, we visited Glendale City a couple years ago, so it was an interesting experience. Now, before I get to Ukraine, just a general comment. The first day, it felt like the session was command and control structured. When you had people coming, for example, Sharon Hall from Australia, she asked that the first 30 minutes of each business session would be dedicated to debating and adopting daily agenda. She was shut down. There's no time for it. We've got too busy of an agenda. It's funny that by the end of Tuesday, there was nothing to discuss. Agenda was over. For the next 2 days, it would be advertisement videos to watch. And Friday, it was even canceled afternoon. There was nothing. Young girl from NAD, Tiffany Steinweg, came up to say, look, there's a number of issues that are not on the agenda. Allow us to talk. There's no room to add things. And that's been a bit disappointing. I could talk because I prepared already 400 slides PowerPoint for my church to give a report from different perspective. And Loren, you're being very nice.
Don't give all 400 of them today,
Right.
Alex.
Loren, you're very nice when you mentioned about weeping. We watched last night Ted giving interview to Review, and that question came up. How do you respond to people say that you were crying after learning that you're not reelected? And in his response, he was not nice to alternative media. He made a clear statement. Do not believe the lies told by alternative media. Read Review only. Come on, just not right. Now, my comment on Ukraine, I'm Ukrainian. So the last 3+ years, it's been really rough because the church in Eurasian division has been divided. Friends are not speaking to each other because of that. And coming to GC, there was a young person from Eurasian division who had really buttered a pastor who defected from Russia because of persecution. And so tension was in the air. Opening, was it Friday night Ted Wilson did presidential report or Thursday night?
It would be Thursday night.
Thursday night, right?
Somebody told me it was a campaign speech.
Right. But there was a picture from Issyk-Kul, which is a Russian church, and there's a picture of an older gentleman receiving the Bible and sitting in the crowd with a Russian uniform. I mean, he wouldn't serve, so this is just a dress up, but it shows the support for that patriotic, Russian. Ukrainians were really upset. They were sending each other pictures of that, like, did you see that? But in the same report, he brought Dr. Yuri Bondarenko, who is the director of Angelia Clinic in Kiev, so kind of relaxed. Now, Ukrainian report came before Russian, and Ukrainian report, of course, they spoke about difficulty in times of war, but everybody waited for the Russian report. Now, when Eurasian division gave the report, I sat and listened. I was nervous. I worried. What if they show pictures of Russian pastors volunteering in Eastern Ukraine and giving humanitarian work? That would be very upsetting, would be very provocative to any Ukrainian, but that did not happen. And so for that, I praise God. In fact, at the end of the report, Mikhail Fomich Kaminsky came up and sat unknowingly right in front of me. And I just leaned over, touched his shoulder and said, thank you for the wonderful report. There were no politics. There is no aggravation. Thank you for speaking gospel and mission. And he got a bit emotional. I got a bit emotional. So I would say that Eurasian division report was a relief of pressure. In fact, after that report, Ukrainians start talking to Russians. It became more comfortable to reach across the aisle and say hello. Even though, without mentioning names, good 20% of Russian delegation are pro-Putin. There's a certain person who serves Putin, and he's there too. So there's some people that we simply, as much as we're Seventh-day Adventists, I just don't feel like shaking hands with. So I'm not going to give you all 400 slides, just a few reflection, Loren, okay? By the way, my son is here, and he's a young pastor. He's 25. He's just there saying, don't show me. We're resting in the hotel. And I'm getting to hear perspective from that younger generation on this whole GC experience.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I did meet your son, and very proud. He is in Ohio, and quite a ways from where I am, but
Right.
that's okay. Uh, uh, David or Lena, would either of you like to respond to Alex?
Because sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Lena.
I just think Alex brought a very good point, because of course I have a Russian background, and I saw him after the event, and he told me about it. I think it exists in all human relationships, female, male, black, white. I think when we see Christ in each other, when the Holy Spirit works through each one of us, this is where we strip off everything that culture imposed on us, everything that our upbringing imposed on us, and we become as one united. I mean, we become one with Jesus. Remember, I had my presentation on the Holy Spirit, becoming one and experiencing it with all fibers of your body, not just with your eyes, but with everything. But this is where it comes down to. You know, my thing is to see a potential in every person and not to judge anyone for any stand that they take. I try to be very careful, even with my opponents, to, as hard as it can be, I try not to judge. I think that's my biggest thing.
Yeah, well, that's very good. I really appreciate that comment, Lena.
But the
David,
same stand for
go
injustice.
ahead. Finish what you were going to say. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I just wanted to make one comment about what I believe. When God created human beings, you know, biblically, you know, helper and non-helper and all of this, created a man and a woman equally, on the equal grounds. That's very important because when he created us, we become co-creators with him. And when we have the heart of Jesus, when we see suffering and we see injustice, our heart hurts and we cannot stand passing it or not responding. So when I see injustice done to women or children or minorities of any kind, and if I have a heart of Jesus, I cannot just pass. I cannot just look and say, yeah, it's bad, and you just continue my life. So my life has to change somehow. I have to be somehow involved. I have to speak up. I have to tell the world that this is injustice. This is what the heart of Jesus is. And if I say Russia is attacking Ukraine, I have to speak up. I have to say something about it. You see, this is where I stand. I think it is good to have love. It is good to not judge people. But when I have the love of Jesus, suffering cannot just pass me by. My heart changes, and injustice cannot just pass me by. My heart changes. I have to do something about it because I'm co-creator with God, because he created me to be his feet and his hands. There are people who've been feet and hands to me when I was in my terrible car accident. So I want to be the feet and hands for whoever else I meet.
Yeah, you know that, like, when you read the question of Christ and culture, you know, all of us had to study Niebuhr when we were in seminary, and he always made the point that Christ, the transformer of culture, was the model that he thought was the most important one. We need to have an Adventist Day Sabbath seminar about that sometime, Lena. George Tichy, your turn.
Yes. I'm glad that you survived your first experience there. It was good. In 2010, after Ted Wilson being elected president, I listened to his sermon that he delivered or speech at the AIS, I guess, Adventist Industries and Services. And at that time, I made some comments on social media, I guess Spectrum. Today I was not active on A Today. But I was saying, okay, now the Adventist train has been put in reverse and you are going backwards for year after year after year, and that happened. So this election now is actually fresh air coming. It's very good that the church got rid of that guy that was keeping everything stuck and going backwards to 1844 or so. No progress. And I understand also that the Adventists, there are many Adventists frustrated and experiencing fatigue, Adventist fatigue, because of this stagnation, these problems. And also the message, now I'm concerned. I'm glad that Keller was elected. Actually, when he was taken from the division to the GC, I predicted at that time he will be the next president. And guess what? I am not a false prophet. But now he's preaching hope. I think that hope is a little bit dangerous to focus on this, because the Adventist community is experiencing fatigue of 180 years because the hope has not been realized. And now refocusing on that, I think that focusing on creating or developing mature Christians is better than start talking about hope, because that can increase the amount of frustration again. So I know his speech was good, was okay, but we have to be careful too. Brazilians, I'm Brazilian, not by birth, but by living there 40 years, and I have to be careful with them. They talk this and this, but sometimes, and I don't know him, I know his father very well from when he was a student still in school, his father. So I'm not judging him, but we have to be careful. Brazilians are very good at talking, and at the same time, during the boards and meetings, all that, they stab in the back. So I would say, let's give him 6 months to see the real colors of color, because that would be a very, very interesting thing to see how it develops. So just these comments on this, the focus on mission is and hope. Let's focus on helping people to become mature Christians, like Adventist Today does, like Spectrum does, etc. So that's my comment. Thank you, and welcome back. Should I keep talking?
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, George. I would say that it's not just Brazilians. I'll temper your comment a little bit. It's anybody who is in a high position of leadership has a temptation to do the expedient thing and not the honest thing, or not the right thing. That's human nature, and it seems to be particularly true among. It seems to be particularly true among people who are in a political position. And like it or not, Adventist church leadership is political. It just is. Bjorn, you were there at the sermon this morning. Did you feel like the train that George was talking about was going forward again rather than in reverse? Did you get a feeling for that?
Well, I mean, what I think is evident is that the emphasis of Kohler is different. So where, and again, I consider Wilson a warm person on a personal level. I think his style, however, was very much one of control, and he was always worrying about outside influences, and it was a lot of fear and control, and this kind of urgency about last day events. I feel like the emphasis has definitely shifted to, we're all in this together. We come from different walks and we disagree, but the main point should remain the main point, and the main point for Kohler is mission, right? So last week it was let's be bold. This week it was, we're all in this for mission, and let's make less of our differences and more of that focus. And it seemed to resonate with people. And I had conversations with friends today. One who'd been a pastor in the Global South was telling me about Crosswalk Jakarta. Have you guys heard of that? I mean, we've all heard of a crosswalk Riverside or whatever, but Crosswalk Jakarta, that's Southeast Asia. That is one of the most conservative bastions of the church. And things are changing. It's just it happens away from the spotlight often. So yeah, I don't know. I think the emphasis has definitely shifted. Now, I think George might be right that to be words, and we'll have to give it. I would give him 18 months as opposed to 6 months. I don't think much will change in 6. But what has changed is people are emboldened. I mean, David's here talking with us. It's not just him. I mean, I just had an extensive conversation with someone from the Review who did not want to be named this morning, and things are shifting that way. One more thing about Kohler is he is reluctant to look the revolutionary, but he really is saying different things. Like, for example, I asked him in the first press conference, I said, how will your administration look different from Wilson's? And he looked at me, he laughed, and he said, that's a smart question. I don't want to draw that comparison. And then he went on to make exactly that comparison. He said, I'm younger, I'm more into tech. And he said later in the interview, in the press conference, I am open to conversation. I mean, he clearly is signaling that this is a different style. And also, very encouragingly, I don't think we've said this yet. He said, I'm not going after the academics. I think Alex Spectrum asked him that. He said, that's not what I'm into. I'm not here to, police the academics. So, I'm cautiously optimistic. It could all be PR, but we're already starting to act in the church as though it isn't. So let's see.
I'm optimistic too. I feel the same way. Indeed, and we knew that he came with some baggage, but what leader doesn't? But I'm optimistic. Sherry Craig.
Lauren, I decided to show my face.
All right.
I had a really strong reaction to David Neal's statement about we need to have a change of generations, because that's exactly what I was told 3 generations ago, 35 years, when I was very active with AAW trying to get women ordained. And I'm not sure another change of generation there's going to be people left of my generations coming. I have 7 grandchildren. I think one of them goes to church, 2 are absolutely atheist, and the rest really, they don't care. Okay, so I think that's pretty typical. So, but yeah, I mean, people told me that. I told myself that we have to have a change of generations, but that was 3 generations ago. So thank you.
David, I'm going to let you answer that. I remember saying when I was a young pastor, I said to one of the pastors who thought like me, I said, won't it be nice when guys like us get into leadership and everything would be more progressive? He said, what if just the opposite happens? Well, guess what? Who was right? He was right. What do you think, David?
In the 1990s, when I was working in youth ministry, I thought I could change the world. I thought we could do everything within a decade. And Elder Paulson was leading the church. Remember that? And in reality, Elder Paulson was actually a comfort blanket. And you know what I'm trying to say there, respectfully. He was a comfort blanket because we thought we had a friend in leadership, and we did, and particularly those of us in Europe. But the church, many in the church, don't show any sign of moving. So here's the critical question. You try and change the mind of someone who has a fundamentalist worldview. Oh my goodness. And I thought at one stage I probably could, but I think it's lock solid. And so what happens is, what we do now, we say, okay, where we, in the Trans-European Division, we recognize this humbly and honestly. And we're saying the only way to resolve this is to create new communities. New communities we will love and respect the fundamentalist churches, the plain readers. We are here to serve plain readers. We may not be able to change their minds, but we must love them as leaders love their sheep, right? And we want to help them grow. But we know how difficult it is for a plain reader to start interpreting. So part of the mission strategy is, okay, we love them and we will serve them, but at the same time, we will create new communities that will help this generation connect better with the Lord and, of course, connect better with the world around us. So that's the strategy. And again, it doesn't happen overnight. I wish I could, and I'm now 63 and I'm in the final years of ministry. And if I thought I could do it in 5 years, with a Messiah complex, I've now got a new role. We can change the world. We can change the church in 5 years. I don't think that's real. But I believe, but I still believe in the supernatural power of the Spirit, the fresh power of the Spirit, and hope that somehow He can help us where we sometimes feel it may take a bit longer.
Yeah, you make a good point. I had a friend who said to me one time, he said, there was a time in my life when I believed that that we shall be changed, meant that if any man is in Christ, he's a new creature. I thought that meant really clearly and very quickly. And he said, I don't see that happening very often. And I have to confess, I didn't see it happen very often. I wanted it to happen.
Would you kindly excuse me? I actually have a plane to catch to go back to England, and
hey,
it's been
we will let you go.
It has been a wonderful privilege to be with you, and I hope we can dialogue more. I really do. This is great.
We shall indeed.
God bless you.
David, you be careful, and we wish you the best.
Thank you. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Linda, your turn.
Thank you. It's been interesting to me, certainly, to have read the articles and to hear the comments and the observations that have been brought today. I'm old enough to remember a song from the 1950s sung by Peggy Lee, and it was called "Is That All There Is?" I'm sort of torn between that and Stevie Wonder's "Nothing from Nothing Leaves Nothing." But that's kind of where I am with listening to the things that have been said today. No disrespect to anyone, except that I think that we all need a good dose of reality. And what I mean by that is this. In public remarks, as just an example, the newly reelected treasurer, when asked about having more women at the top levels of leadership, wanted everyone to know, and I'm paraphrasing as best I can recall it, that the reporter needed to realize that there was much prayer in the nominations and the voting, and that the Holy Spirit was at work. And the message there is that what is what the Holy Spirit intended. He believes that, folks. And I suspect that all the others who have been elected feel very much the same way. They have a mandate. And the mandate does not call for change, not in any of the areas that most of us here have an interest in. And so I think the expectation that we're going to see anything of a material difference is just a pipe dream. In fact, Jack Haynes said it best. He said, more Adventists, more tithes, less science. I mean, that's really kind of, in a simplistic way, and fewer women at the top. Loren, you say you're hopeful, and God bless you, as we say in the South, bless your heart. But I'm just not, I just don't know that there's anything for us to really hang our hats on. And I'll tell you the other thing fundamentally why this, I think my explanation is true, is that it's hard to have good outcome when you don't have good process. And the process of General Conference, from what everybody here has described that I've heard, is terrible. It's lousy process. Nobody that's ever worked in business and industry would ever contemplate structuring the organization going forward based on the kind of process that's demonstrated in a General Conference session. So to expect a good outcome, is really wishful thinking at its very best. So sorry to kind of cast a pall over it, but that's really how I'm seeing it.
Aren't you a cheery little sunbeam? Jack, seriously, less science? You think you think he's going to go that direction?
He wrote it. He wrote it. I took it right off the chat.
Oh, well, yeah, but I'm putting him on the spot now. I'm asking him, less science?
You know, I'm saying mission is a word, and so I'm okay with mission because I was a missionary, and I took health, and I took openness, and I took kindness, and I took generosity on behalf of the church to a place that needed it, several places that needed it. And so I'm in favor of mission, but again, you know, what's the mission? Let's define it. And if the mission is more of the same, then it's just sad. But there is plenty of mission. The world is full of need. There are people in Texas that need Adventists to help. There are people in Ukraine that need Adventists to help. There are people in Russia and Uzbekistan and, you know, Estonia that need Adventists to help. And there's plenty of things for us to do. So we can have a mission. I like Adventists. I've been to a couple general conferences, and there are lots of nice people there. I'm sorry that this is your first chance to meet some of us, Loren, but I'm glad that at least finally you've got one chance. But so, you know, I like Adventists. I like the people that are there. I like the possibilities. And I believe that that we have churches because Christ came to make a church. And so I'm just hopeful that if I was born in the Catholic Church, I would make that one better. And since I'm born into the Adventist Church, I've tried to make this a better one. So, Linda, you and I weren't there, so cut them some slack. Let's be hopeful.
Well, I don't know about hope.
I have to.
I do agree with you, Jack, that their mission can happen, but I see it as individualized. I see it as my responsibility to look for opportunities around me where I can do mission.
Yeah, you are right in two ways, Linda. One is that the process is absolutely horrible. To bring 2,000 people together who don't even want to show up because you're doing the most boring work possible. That's stupid. And yes, when they put those discussion questions up, they were all about Adventism, what the church leaders could do. There wasn't really much sense of a little bit of sense of personal vision. But you're right in those two things. I just want to be more cheerful than you are. I do.
Fair enough.
Although I will say I'm not gonna do this again. Unless they bring me in my ashes in a little jar and walk me around and say, "Here, Loren's at the general conference session." I don't think I'm going to sit through all of this again.
No, Loren, if they offer you a booth, you're going to be there.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Jack and Linda, thank you. I'm going to go on to Andre. You had your hand up and then you disappeared and then you had it up again. So let's see if we can get you on here.
Yes, thank you kindly, Ron. Really wonderful to be with you guys. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay, I want to bring you greetings from Newbold, you know, in England. We are very well in here. We watched from distance. And as you know, we were waiting to see, as you expected, people were saying is going to change a few things in the administration. And when we saw the new GC president being brought to the floor, being voted, everyone said, well, new things are happening. And then we were looking at the reality which we had in inter-European division. It just happened that the colleague of mine, it is being elected as the new president of Inter-European Division. I want to say that is an example of change taking place. So it's second change. I wanted just to speak to David, but David left. We will meet him in here on our territory, because another big change which has occurred, and as we say, change takes time. Really, as Adventists, we are good at watching from distance, but when things take place, we need to give credit to these changes. And I want to speak the last point, which I really want to speak about. Even if Pastor Ted Wilson was for so long, it just happens. I know him personally from the time when he served as the EAD, European Asian Division, and the amount of work they inputted on our territory, that was really a big credit. The one thing which really put me on the kind of not so happy, it is knowing that he was for 3 terms and he was running for the 4th, if I may say so. That was a questionable point which many were commenting on, because, we have capacities as leaders to input, but you are not the only leader in the Adventist Church, as you know. And good leaders, they should know their time when the time is up. So recommending for our new leaders, when you feel that you've done what you can do, think that is time, make sure that you are not asked to leave and you are not sobbing around the corner. Thank you.
Yeah, we do. He denies that he was sobbing around the corner, but I think it's fairly clear that he hoped to be reelected, and he was disappointed, and I think that's safe to say. And I've been puzzling about what goes on in a person's mind that they're 75 years old and they still think they're entitled to stay on. Same thing happened with Joe Biden, our American president. I just don't understand that. When George Washington, I'll give you a little example. When George Washington, he tried to resign after his first term. He said, the nation doesn't need me and me only. They convinced him to do a second term. By the time he finished the second term, he was saying, I made so many mistakes. I want to go back to my farm. What happens to people when they get into a high position that they think, I'm the only one who can do this? Only me. And there's something that warps in their thinking. I whatever I do, I want to go out gracefully rather than saying, oh, why did you not take me? I really appreciate that, Andre.
Can I say one more thing, please?
You may.
Yeah, I really wanted to also say thank you to Alexander. He spoke a lot nicely about the relationship between the Ukrainians and Russians. My background is from Moldova, but it happened that I ran away from the war in Moldova. I ran away to Russia, and from Russia I ended up in Romania. And from Romania, God helped me for 30 years now. I'm in England working as a pastor. God is working amazing. And it just happens that in here I'm pastoring Russians, Ukrainians, and ex-USSR, plus within the Greater London. So really the relationship, let me say it as it is, the tension sometimes is really beyond comprehension. Even in our churches, my church in London collapsed in a relationship between Ukrainians and Russians. But God helped so well that, we are seeing a lot of mending bridges. And at Newbold International, where I'm currently pastoring, we managed to support this in the background, that the church stayed together. And the only thing which I can say, it is not us, but it's the Spirit. And we have a good saying which is spread amongst us: Jesus in my heart will not let me argue with you, even we don't have same political views, or same background with Jesus from your heart, because it's the same Jesus which brought us, united us. And this is our spirit. And Alex, truly appreciate the fact that you brought your son into ministry, and keep up the good work and keep up the unity in our church. That's the main thing which will keep us going strong. Thank you kindly.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Andre. I'm going to ask Ed Reisnider, and I'm going to have to mute because he's sitting next to me.
Yeah. There's Loren right over there. We're sitting in a space in our hotel. I didn't attend the session. I'm actually here for some Adventist Today activities yesterday and tomorrow. But I want to react to what Jack Haynes said a few minutes ago. Or I think, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of said, well, but what is our mission? And then he went on to refer to people all around the world that need help, that need comfort, that just need, and implied that maybe that was our mission. In his sermon today, which I watched from my hotel room, Kohler had a slide. If you were watching, you probably saw it, that distinctly said the mission of the Seventh-day Adventist Church is to spread the three angels' message. And I have to admit, I kind of cringe at that. We have managed, I think, corporately, to twist the gospel around a bit. So we say that is the three angels' message is the gospel. And I bet if we took if we could poll this 136 people that are on here at the moment and ask what is the gospel, we would probably, the majority would not say it's the three angels' message. The first angel does refer to the gospel, but I can't see the three angels' messages as being the gospel, and I don't know how we have done that. I don't know the history of how that change occurred over time. It may have started with a quote by Ellen White. But really, yes, it did. Really is that our mission, is to talk about Babylon has fallen, come out of her, my people? Is that really our thing? I feel like it's not personally for me. The gospel is about, First Colossians says, hey, we were bad people and Jesus came along and made us part of the kingdom of God through what Jesus did. That's the gospel. Mm-hmm. And I think as long as we have this kind of halfway turn about what the gospel really is, we're going to have problems. I wish we could get that straight. Anyway, that's a soapbox I got on today. And I just wanted to say, Jack, I agree with you that I think there are better ways to define mission for our fellowship.
I do find it interesting over the years that when people get farther and farther from eschatology, they tend to want to do things in the here and now. They want to bring justice and righteousness. Lena, I want to bring you back in here. Can you listen to what's going on here and make some responses? There's been some really interesting things happening.
What would you like me to comment on?
On this thing about having about what is the gospel really, and what should we be doing?
You know, honestly, I just want to say that I've been in different camps, and I have friends from different camps, and there are many friends who disagree with me on a lot of issues. My take on it is Linda's take on it. It is very individualized. I feel like when we talk about the work of the Holy Spirit, I think the Spirit works with a variety of different people in different levels and in different situations and in different organizations or in different camps, let's put it this way. So the work of the Spirit, and for me, the spreading of the gospel is to seeing the hearts of other people. And when I see the heart of another person, the camp doesn't matter as much to me as what I see in the person's heart. And I have friends from completely two opposite camps, and I see each one's heart. And I believe one says, I'm led by the Spirit, and the other says, I'm led by the Spirit. I think God will sort it out at the end. It's not our job, really. But I think connection and seeing people over the organization, we like to be an organization, but I think we lose people in the organization. You see what I'm saying? And this is what I struggle with young people, especially. I try to be a person. I try to see them. I try to hear them. And I work with young people at Union College, for example, Union Adventist University. I don't want to lose the people in the name of an organization or in the name of religion, for that matter, you know? So I think that's where I see the gospel, if you ask me.
You know, it reminds me of what I said in my little presentation, Lena, that we're sitting upstairs with Jerry Wagner of Fulcrum 7 and Andy Roman of Advent Messenger, and we prayed together for our ministries. And there's some humanization that comes into this, some kindness that came into that. It was rather surprising to both me and Bjorn, and we both were rather impressed by it, actually, that we found common ground. Jerry's wife has a very serious form of cancer. Bjorn, I unmuted you. Join this conversation.
Yeah, that was for me one of the unexpected real perks of being here, which was the kind of ecumenical experience of Adventism. It's a bad word within Adventism, but yeah, we talked sincerely with Jerry about his wife, Andy. Wildly different views. I put in an article that I wrote about this, that Andy and I basically joked that we used to read the other's publication to know what not to talk about, or to be able to know what the issue is and take the opposite side. Well, here we are, we're friends, even though we completely disagree on a whole lot of stuff. Like, I think the only area that Andy and us and our team probably really agreed on was that we don't like censorship. We don't like people shutting down the conversation from on high. So yeah, that was beautiful, and to me, it's so easy to be cynical about GC session. There's a ton of stuff that's wrong. It's hugely wasteful on multiple levels, and that's got to change. I hope it does. I don't know if it will, but there's no getting away from. Like, for example, this year, I'm going to take us to a group here. Look at what's happening here. I mean, this is there's a group huddled here praying from I think the Inter-American Division. Here's a group from Africa. Over here is Southeast Asians having potluck and little kids running around. I mean, it's hard to be cynical about the human experience of fellowship, and interesting things happen there. So I don't know. I'm a missionary kid. I kind of grew up with this, and it feels like home. So I wanted to be here in the craziness today and experiencing it. So I don't know. I think good things can still happen when we rub shoulders and are willing to meet with people, even if we disagree. So that was a huge plus for me, and it's something I refuse to be cynical about. I think we should continue meeting with each other and breaking bread.
Thank you, Bjorn. Bill Garber, I'm going to end after Karsten, so no more hands. We've been on going for a long time here.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the A Today team for every day giving attention to a very complex sometimes and yet oddly simple at other times week. I appreciate it. I learned what I felt I needed to learn, inspired where I needed to be. It was just really, really well done. Thanks, guys, for everything you've done this week.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
I also would like to respond to the sermon today by the new president, Kohler. I was inspired. This man is new wineskin, and I think we all do well to do our best to make some new wine with those words he used, whether they're, he said, we are not going to make people fearful. We're going to make friends. And maybe we don't have to go too far.
Oh, I would be, Bill, you know, from all the years that we've known each other, that my main complaint about Adventism is that it's been too fearful, too sensationalistic. It hasn't been personal enough. So just to say, we're not going to make people fearful. What a step forward. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your kind words and for your compliments too.
The great thing about what you bring to your contributions to all of us here is, if you will, I think you recognize what Jack said. He just happened to be born Adventist. And he figured if he'd been born Catholic, he would be doing his best to make that religious experience meaningful to him as we are for ours. We are all Adventists for social reasons. It's the dynamic that brings us here and to some degree may hold us here. And then you give us permission to say, hey, it's okay to be puzzled. It's okay to be frustrated. You don't have to run away because you are. And that's really, really encouraging, Loren. Thank you so much. And the authority with which you made that permission for many years was as a working pastor of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and now a retired pastor. I'd like to respond just briefly to Ed's observation about the three angels. Can we make a little new wine here? If you listen to just the first angel's declaration, okay, universal from on high, clarification, loud voice, we get the everlasting gospel. And just that one sentence, the next angel explains what happened at that moment. And the saints rushed the exits, and Babylon collapses. And then the third angel is observing the saints, not running around, but waiting patiently trusting the promises of God in the same way Jesus did as our example. Hey.
Yeah, the patience has been underestimated, hasn't it? In favor of the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. The patience really is probably the heart of that passage. Thank you, Bill.
You know,
good thoughts.
Yeah. The great controversy is a theodicy, and all theodicies in the end are inadequate.
That's right. I agree.
And so we do well to accept the inadequacy without abandonment of the divine, it seems.
Thank you,
Cheering
Bill.
you on,
Very
man. Thanks
nicely
again
said.
so much.
Thank you. Karsten, you have the last word.
Yeah, I'm unmuted, I guess. First of all, a huge thank you to you and the whole supporting cast in covering a, I think, very challenging session as the outsiders, which Jim Walters considers a badge of honor that you should take. I'm still very troubled as I've listened probably to more sessions than most people have, including every word, taking copious notes on Kohler's sermon today. And it's true, he ended on 2 positive slides that our job is to give hope and joy to the world. But all the other slides were fear and trepidation and disasters, and the world has never been as bad as it is, and the clock with the countdown to midnight from the atomic scientist, and on it went, and so on. And the classic narcissism of the mission of the church is, again, focusing on us instead of people, instead of focusing on the suffering, instead of focusing on the disenfranchised women that we have among us who are showing an incredible patience and so on. And that with the contrast of the urgency. Jesus is coming soon, repeated it just as often as previous administrators have come. And that cognitive dissonance, it hurts so much because I think we have to make some new wine on that old bottle there to make sense out of that. The way I do it is I say, Jesus came a second time when I accepted him. He came into my heart. That makes sense for me. That's not talking about things that are in one respect nonsense. So my conclusion is there's really not that much new, maybe a little bit of opening of a crack here and there, giving some more cause for optimism. But my bottom line is I'll continue to work in our local church, and we'll do what we can there that is revolutionary and relevant. And that's what we saw in many of the reports from the European divisions, which I did notice, the Trans-European division where David Neal was communications director. You know, a non-alcoholic bar in Norway, a huge ski trip in Denmark, which is one of the biggest church events that incorporates a lot of non-church people. I mean, these are truly outside the box, untraditional things. And I think the revolution has to and will come from the bottom. Thank you again, Loren, and everyone.
You're certainly welcome. And Len, I got to have you respond to this because Karsten is also talking about including more women. And then I'll give you, afterwards, when we finish that, I'll tell you who's coming the next couple of weeks.
You know, a couple of years ago, I attended an event for women ministers, and Alex Bryant got up, the president of the North American division, and he was reelected this time. So 2 years ago, when we were all together, he had the final word of wisdom to tell us. And it just stuck with me. It stuck with me so deeply, and I would like to share that with you too. he said, we would have still been in slavery if the white men did not get up, stand up with us, protect us, solicit for us, and fight for us. And he said, you women, we need the men to stand up with you. You will still not be ordained. You will still be subjugated. You will still be looked down upon if the men don't stand up, and we're with you. So that was his appeal to us. It stuck with me because I think it is really important for the oppressor to stand with the oppressed, and that's when the change can come. Because sometimes the oppressed are crying, but the oppressive class, I'm sorry for categorizing, I hate categories, but nevertheless, I feel there's a lot of wisdom in it. So I just want to say thank you to all the men who do stand up with me and who do fight for me and who do support me in my ministry. Thank you.
We appreciate you a lot, Lena, and all of our female teachers and pastors. We need to be more cognizant of them. Now, listen, we've got to bring this to a close. And I know a couple of you wanted to show pictures, and I'm sorry, I can't figure out how to do that correctly. And I think I have to make a change at the website. But let me tell you this. Next week, we have Dr. Sigve Tonstad coming. The week after that, we have Dr. Lawrence Turner originally from Newbold. And then August 2nd, I'm still trying to twist the arm of one of my favorite teachers, and he's resisting me, but you know who you are, Olive Hemmings. I will tell who it is, but Olive Hemmings knows who I'm talking to teach for us that week. On August 9, this should be fun. I'm having the guys from the podcast Seeking Who They Sought come and talk to us. And we're going to do an interview with them. It's going to be kind of like this. They're going to tell us some of the most interesting interviews that they've had in Seeking Who They Sought. And I met these guys this week. They're great guys and really interested in having them come. So thank you all very much. And goodbye, and have a lovely remainder of your Sabbath wherever you are. Bye-bye.